Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nutrition Connection podcast, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Hicks-Roof, dietitian, researcher, and really lifelong advocate for the role of nutrition and health. Each episode, I sit down with dietitians and nutrition experts, really across the food and healthcare landscape, leaders who touch every aspect of our lives. Whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone maybe simply interested in food, health, and wellness, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employer nor the employers of my guests. So let's go ahead and get connected. I am super excited to bring on our podcast guest today, Trevor Woo. He's a medical liaison at Ipsen Biopharmaceuticals. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about your podcast.
Yeah, so Trevor and I actually did our PhDs at the same time at Texas A&M, and it's been so cool to watch his journey as a dietitian and a researcher. And so I can't wait for you guys to understand and hear his story. Trevor, what inspired you and made you want to become a nutrition professional?
Yes, my interest actually started when I was deciding what to study for my college, right? And so I'm always uh, curious about nutrition and what it does to the body and wellness and fitness, right? And when I think about nutrition, I didn't think about all these different possibilities that are available for a nutrition major or dietetics major. Initially, I thought I was just going to be a dietitian and help people lose weight at the gym. And that's how I, got into nutrition major in my college. But, over the course of years, I've just become, it's in a whole different direction. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even know, did you do your undergrad at Texas A&M or what brought you into your PhD?
Yes, I did. I did my undergrad at Texas A&M, nutrition as well. Yes.
Okay. And yeah, when
Uh-huh.
Trevor and I were at Texas A&M, I was really in more of like a research translation lab. I did a lot of like physician nutrition education. But Trevor, you were really deep into the bench science, I remember. And I remember talking to you and like, wow, maybe you could talk about it. You know a lot better about your
Yes.
research than I would.
Yes, Kristen. My undergrad was more on the dietetic path because, as you know, there's the general path and then there's the molecular path and the dietetics path, right? I was in the dietetic path, and then along the way, I think it was during my junior year, I met Dr. Woo, another Woo, um, who had, you know, um, he taught metabolism and nutrition, and he had an opening as in his lab. So I joined his lab to become a research assistant, and that's how I kind of got into the research world. And come senior year, and then he was like, "Why don't you apply for a master's or PhD?" And I said, "Sure." And so, and then that's how I got into master's program, but I switched to a PhD in the middle of it. So I, jumped straight to PhD. And during that time, I was researching in fat liver disease and the mechanism of metformin. And so you can imagine the kind of research is, cell studies and animal studies. And that's how I kind of started off in my research career, per se.
What I think that's another really interesting thing as I'm having more researchers that are going to be on the podcast already or in the future is the field of nutrition research is so diverse everywhere from bench truly to translation. And so,
Mhm.
but I think your research area really kind of has led you into your journey and what you do today. So let's discuss the journey.
Yes.
What have you been doing since post graduation? What kind of positions have you had? And then what's your position today?
Yes, Kristen. So my PhD work, right, in the bench science or well of the basic science area, led me to my postdoc with UCLA in the clinical nutrition department. So UCLA has a clinical nutrition department where they have a bench science, basic science lab, and also a clinical research area as well. So it's a very translational research area where you can apply your skills in basic and clinical research, and advance your career that way. So when I was at UCLA, I was involved in the research, same area, fatty liver disease, obesity, and diabetes, but the focus is more on the gut microbiome. And I'm sure that the future is one of the future of nutrition is gut microbiome. So UCLA clinical nutrition is the belief in the gut microbiome and want to study the mechanism of how gut microbiome plays a role in health and diseases. So obesity, diabetes, those kind of metabolic diseases are one of the main focus. So we would do pomegranate study, like pomegranate juice and how it impacts the gut microbiome, and we do avocado study, and so this is really really interesting. And of course, when it comes to gut microbiome, you'll be dealing with fecal collection, which is great. I mean, so there's like the animal study part of it, and then there's the human side of it as well. And so and then at the same time, at the research area, uh, the clinical nutrition department also has a weight loss a clinic. So I was part-time dietitian there as well. So it kind of works out very nicely, for a RD, PhD, or any kind of like, dietitian who wants to have an experience in research, right? And so that was a perfect environment, right? Um, and then talking about their weight loss program, they actually utilized very low calorie diet. So it's like 800 calories to
What?
1200. So it's a medically supervised diet program. So they team up with the MD. So there's MD, the RD, and then there's a behavioral therapist as well in that weight loss team. So that is a very very interesting, like, exciting time for me when I was at UCLA. And then 2.5 years later, I decided to join the pharmaceutical. I literally had to Google what can a PhD do in a non-academic area, right? And medical science liaison came up. And so I was like, what is this? And I looked it up and did some research. And really, it's kind of translating clinical data, research data, into more layman terms and communicating that to the clinicians, practitioners like MDs, MPs, PAs, right? And also how it brings value to the company or pharmaceutical companies that we collect the insights or whatever feedback that we have from the clinicians back to the company and improve R&D, right? And so 2019 is when I first joined pharmaceutical as a medical
Wow.
liaison, and the first pharmaceutical company was had a drug in NASH, fatty liver disease, and that's how I kind of transitioned over to pharma because of my background in fatty liver disease research, right? Um, and I've been a medical liaison for almost 6 years now, and that's how my journey. That's my journey.
I love
Um,
how you said that you had to Google how to use a PhD in non-academia, because I think even so many dietitians, they're like, what do I look
yeah,
for in other career paths beyond clinical or food service or community? Kind of like those three big buckets. But same for PhDs. A
yeah,
lot of times you get trained so much to go the academic route that you're like, what else can I do? But
yeah.
we all have these incredible skill sets of translating scientific evidence into sound bites for different stakeholder groups. And
Hmm.
so I feel like you're at a perfect fit, especially with your background and really understanding the mechanism and the development of fatty liver.
Hmm.
And now you're in this sort of industry. So that's really interesting. I
Yeah,
also want to bring it back because for those of you who've never worked in an animal or a human lab, when you're doing gut microbiome and metabolites, you actually have to collect the fecal samples and put them in liquid nitrogen right away. And so you're up all ends of the night. I remember Trevor and I mean, I used to work in an animal lab, and the amount of nights I've spent collecting poop from rats is actually pretty
Yes.
incredible.
Yes. And Christine, now you bring back some memory because back at A&M, right, the lab also do some circadian rhythm studies. So we would have to time our feeding, the time we collect certain samples. So sometimes we even need to wake up at 3 in the morning and go to the lab and collect the samples, you know? So it's so,
Oh, I
yeah,
remember it so clearly. I remember
yeah.
my husband now. Him
Uh-huh.
and I would go to the lab at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
trying to really encourage all the rats to go poop so we could go home
Yep.
after the
Yep.
samples
Yep.
were collected.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. So, okay, so you talked about your current role. And I want to switch gears a little bit because I think Trevor has a really interesting kind of side gig or whole passion that really overlays with nutrition. So, Trevor, tell us a little bit about like your physical fitness journey and how that kind of all maybe stemmed from becoming a dietitian.
Yes. So I recently started in the bodybuilding area and started to join some bodybuilding competitions. Started last year. I did my first men's physique show in December 2024. And then this year again, December, just 2 weeks ago, um, uh, in classic physique category. So I started training for it June 2024. And the reason why is because I've always wanted to do something in the fitness. I mean, as an enthusiast in nutrition and dietetics, right? It's always been my interest, and especially in fitness as well. And now that I have a little more time, um, and I said, why not? I'm getting older, right? I've always wanted to do something fitness related. I mean, I've always been going to the gym, myself, but I want to do something more. And and really, Kristen, I gotta say, going into bodybuilding competitively, it really, I was really excited because of the diet that is involved in getting ready, prepping for the bodybuilding competition, leading up to the day of the competition. I gotta tell you, right? Because you follow the whatever low carb, whatever low fat diet, and then leading up, for example, 3 to 4 weeks out of your show day, you start the low carb diet, you start low calorie, and you become really angry and cranky, and then the week, they call it the peak week, right? The week before your show day, you start manipulating sodium, water, and your carb. You start depleting your carb, and then you carb load on the fourth and the fifth day, and you become the best version of yourself, pumped up on show day. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I told my coach, I was like, I I just thought this is really cool that I get to experience this myself. I mean, I've learned this on textbook, and I never thought that I would get the chance to do this. So, and now being able to do this, I was like, okay, well, this is the best, application of my knowledge that I studied
Well,
in textbook.
that's what's so cool is
Yeah.
not only are you doing this for health reasons, I'm
Yeah.
assuming, but it's also or passions, but it's also really cool because you have that nutrition training. Like you understand sodium restriction or you understand
Hmm.
carb loading, right? Like that maybe an everyday person may
Hmm.
not fully understand these nutrition terminologies. Like you know what's happening physiology wise to
Yes.
your body. So I just think that's super cool. And yeah, keep up the
Yes.
good work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So, how do you feel like scientific evidence or data really impacts your position and what you do, both in your physical fitness journey, but also at your position in biopharmaceuticals?
Yes. So in terms of my fitness journey, the diet that I adhere to is of course, there's all sorts of diet out there, right? But I keep it simple. My coach, my bodybuilding coach and I come up with the diet, and I just follow it. It's very simple, low. When you want to do uh, cutting, you just restrict calories, right? Bulking, you just increase your calorie. And I think a lot of the times we just stick to the very basic principle rather than following a lot of other kind of fad diets, for example. Also kind of some of the ideas. Of course, these are all in the literature, right? Science backed. And so when it comes to my full-time job in the pharmaceutical industry as a medical liaison, right? It's all about the data as well. And I feel like the education of my educational background and the PhD, for example, I think it just taught me how to analyze this data critically, right? And really interpret the data. There is, even a topic, you can have data that's supporting your hypothesis, and then there's data that does not support your hypothesis. So just interpreting the data critically and really make sense of what to what to believe and what not to believe. So
Yeah. No,
yeah,
definitely. What I think data really undermines and is a core component into everything we do as dietitians, no matter what your role is. Like if it is on your own personal health journey or if it's in your role, like science drives everything that we're doing. So,
right.
what is your most favorite or something you're most proud of impact that you've ever had? And it can be personal or professional.
So professionally, I've talked to several people who also had nutrition background, and they, noticed me on LinkedIn of my career pathway, and I was able to tell them about my journey as well and how I ended up now where I'm at. So, and they, sometimes some people also want to like a different pathway and also or a change of environment. It kind of provided them an idea of how to approach this if they want like a different pathway of where they're at right now. And personally, um, in my fitness, I think some people who have been following me um, is tell me that, hey, what you're doing is I think is pretty cool. I think one of this is you, Kristen. You told me that you've been following me on Facebook, right? And I'm glad I'm able to share my journey, my fitness journey, because I think of course this is really relevant to nutrition and dietetics, and hence I want to share that this is possible to whoever is has the passion to do it, because I never thought that I could compete, but I put my mind to it, and I did it. So I think it's important to put yourself out there and share your journey with people, and then people will notice it, and then whoever is attracted to your passion and your path journey will feel inspired. I think it's very important, you know.
Yeah, no, I do think it is so inspiring. And it's also really cool to watch all my friends in the field of dietetics, which I have friends in all different areas and niches of the field based on my background. And it's cool to watch them follow their passions, both personally and professionally, and to see all the different career paths, right? Like even biopharmaceuticals, like that would not, to me, that's like a non traditional dietitian path,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's such a great career opportunity, especially for those who love science, and really want to like digest the science and be able to
yeah.
communicate that out.
And
So,
Kristen, can I add
yeah,
something? Can I add something to that?
of
I think
course.
so for medical liaison, if you look into the job description and the requirement, a lot of times they want terminal degrees. So I think this is where, regardless of what um, I guess different major background you're at, if you have a PhD, RD or not, right? it's for people who have terminal degrees, and the RD component to that actually helped me to break into pharmaceutical because of the clinical experience that is associated with the RD, right? It's what your metabolic panel, you know what it means, right? So when you communicate or when you talk to a doctor in your medical liaison role, you already have the clinical background knowledge of what it means to have high BUN or high glucose or whatever, LDL elevated. So you know that terminologies. It makes it easier for you to communicate with a clinician. So that RD background is absolutely important as well. Um, when it comes to you know um, moving over to the pharmaceutical as a medical liaison.
Well, yeah, and I think you pointed out, like, even the PhD, you're not stuck in a pinhole, right? Like, you do
Hmm.
have a lot of different career opportunities, like medical liaison or medical science liaison, whatever you might call it. But then the RD is only an added bonus. So if you
Yes.
are an RD out there and you're like, do I want to get a higher ed degree? There are other career opportunities that may open up because some of these pharmaceutical jobs do require that terminal degree. So really
Yes.
just kind of balancing like what you're looking for personally and professionally and what sorts of doors you want to open up because I think as dietitians we are trained on translating this metabolic and labs and people into practice, right?
Yes.
And then the PhD just adds a whole nother layer of you add on to that, but then you also understand a really deeper science, whether it's
Yeah.
mechanism work or metabolism or anything from translation, like how to have better
Yeah.
behavior change techniques or things like that. So there's
Right.
so many different career paths. And I think that is again one of the best parts of becoming a dietitian and a nutrition expert is we are so widespread in every
Hmm.
single career we can do. So, Trevor, what kind of suggestions or tips would you give for people who maybe are interested in this pharmaceutical route that you have gone?
Um, I think if anyone who is interested in moving over to pharmaceutical and medical liaison role specifically, I encourage people to reach out on LinkedIn to network. And that's how I kind of well, that was one of the ways that I did as well when I was looking for a medical liaison role in the pharmaceutical industry, is going on LinkedIn and connecting with people who are already medical liaison or the hiring manager, and you can easily tell by looking at the title, saying field medical director or senior director, medical science liaison, or any kind of director or any kind of director role, managerial role for medical liaison. So, connect with them, talk to them about your interest and your background, and how you can um, um, link up your background to the pipeline of the drug of the company, and how you can bring value to the company. Right.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Kristen.
I was going to say, some of the other medical liaison type roles I've seen are for other, supplement companies and oral nutrition supplements, which may not necessarily all require terminal degrees. So you're not out of the running if you want to go into that sector of nutrition without a terminal degree. It just maybe there's some nuance in terms of like hierarchy or moving up the chain depending on your credentials.
Yes, I'm glad you bring that up, Kristen, because supplement company. So yeah, there's a in the pharmaceutical medical device world, right? There's so for example, Fresenius Kabi makes the renal protein shake, right? So they have a lot of other nutrition supplements as well, right? They do have medical team, medical liaisons, and most of them are RD. Most of them have RD backgrounds. And you don't necessarily have to have a terminal degree. But so the RD is the main component to that, right? Um, and also Mead Johnson is also a nutrition company, and I noticed that a lot of the medical liaison also have an RD background, and not all of them have a terminal PhD degree. So so yeah, you're right. I think it's if anything, start with nutrition related kind of companies, that way, and then or even Novo Nordisk, the company that makes the insulin, right? It's for diabetes, so it's very relevant to the RD and their diabetes medical liaisons are a lot of them are RD credential. So that way, so yeah, connect with them and ask about their journey, how they ended up in pharmaceutical or whatever area they're in, and ask them for advice, and how to break into that role.
Yeah, Trevor, I think you just gave such a good example of with new medications always coming on the market. It's such a clear opportunity for dietitians to be involved in these medical science liaison roles, especially when we think about like all the new GLP-1 drugs that are coming and the advancement in medical interventions. And so dietitians can be right there front and center of taking the science, taking the medications, and then how are we ultimately helping to support and optimize patients' health.
Mhm.
So I think that there's a lot of opportunity now and then clearly into the future as that these drugs are going to become more and more prevalent. So Trevor,
Right.
if you had a crystal ball, this is one of my favorite questions. If you had a crystal ball, what do you think is coming next in nutrition? And it can be absolutely anything.
Yeah. So I think although I've been out of the nutritional research per se, but I truly believe the gut microbiome is one of the very hot topics because there's only so little we know about the gut microbiome, right? And so with that being said, personalized nutrition, right? The gut microbiome plays a really important role in personalized nutrition. And I think personalized nutrition is where we're heading in the next 5-10 years. Longevity is another area where they think you've heard of the fasting diet, intermittent fasting, and there's even something called the fasting mimicking diet now, to improve longevity. So these are the two. I'm sure there's a lot of other areas where nutrition is headed as well, but I'm sure you agree personalized nutrition is a very interesting topic. And yeah, I that's what I think the nutrition is heading, and
Yeah,
also with the advancement of AI as well. And I can see AI being used to I kind of synergistically with personalized nutrition to really tailor or customize the diets to individuals. So yeah, what do you think, Kristen?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many things, but I try and stick it to one. So with
Yeah.
this episode, I'm going to say I agree with you in terms of the gut microbiome. I think we're still in such early infancy of the research, and in both of us having worked in gut microbiome labs for years, I think you'll continue to see that evolve as we get better methodology, more sophisticated techniques, and then you can also overlay AI in terms of analyzing and synthesizing. Because if anyone has ever seen the output from a microbiome and a metabolite study,
Uh-huh.
it's like gigabytes of data. I mean, they're these massive Excel spreadsheets that
Yeah.
honestly give me headaches. Um, and so it's like, so we know who's there in terms of what bacteria, but ultimately, I think it's going to come down to what's the functionality to all these bacteria,
Yes.
and does it matter the concentrations of these different bacteria to then actually like lean into whether that's gut brain axis or
Yeah.
immuno allergies, or I
Yep.
think there's so much opportunity with precision nutrition that AI can definitely help support along with advanced nutrition research methods.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Trevor, for coming on the podcast. It was so fun to hear your story, and make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a rating for the podcast, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thank you.